I grew up in the Guadalupe neighborhood, which we had a big divide, not only 35, but the other divide was 7th Street.
So it was a line between, if you physically cross the street, that's where the African American community began. And you would head south. We said it began there, but people said that's where the Mexican community ended.
The first place that I recall living was with my aunt, and she lived on Santa Rita Street. We lived with my aunt because that's the first place my parents and I arrived at when we immigrated from Mexico.
It was a small town. Everybody knew each other. And we lived in a lot of rental houses, very poor. There's a lot of segregation.
And we moved into the Gold Valley neighborhood area. And it was an area that was undeveloped, but we didn't have drainages for the water or to flow, and the creeks were undeveloped.
As a young kid, you live for the day, you go out and play. You know, you never don't really realize that you're poor or that you're discriminated against until you get older. So as we grew up, we began to see the differences between us and other communities in town.
There's increasingly high expectations being expressed by Mexican Americans, reinforced by the returning veterans from the Second World War who have experienced foxhole democracy. They come back expecting to be treated fairly the way they were treated in the military. They're still facing seemingly unchanging social conditions that we describe in terms of a gap. Gaps in educational achievement, gaps in political representation, gaps in upward employment.
When the World War II veterans came back from the war, they started to change things, but not politically. It was more socially.
Most of the organizations that appeared very prominently during the late 60s and early 70s come from Texas. The League of United Latin American Citizens formed in 29, the American GI Forum formed in 47, and then later MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, and others. They originated in Texas. The youth then makes use of these opportunities when they graduate from high schools at a higher rate and then join the professional ranks in the Mexican American community and the social movement.
So in 1938, I went to the first grade at Zavala Elementary School, and it didn't take me long to realize that the only kids in that school were Mexicans. So it was a segregated school.
In Austin, of course, it's totally divided, with I-35, and so Mexican Americans live on the east side of I-35 and south. And this is a total construction on the part of the city council dating back to the 1920s. There's nothing natural about it.
My mother was from Mexico, so she spoke Spanish to us all the time. So I truly was bilingual. I spoke Spanish at home, and when I was at school, the teachers would punish us if we spoke Spanish.
My mother raised us speaking English. She wanted us to be competitive in school, and even though we were exposed to Spanish, we spoke English, and without the accent that a lot of the Chicanos had in those days. People that were primarily Spanish speakers kind of looked down on us because we couldn't speak the language.